Greetings. I'm Jude Landsman, and welcome to Black Talk Race in the Workplace. I'm your moderator and chair of the NAACP Boulder County Economic Opportunity Committee. It's a pleasure to welcome our corporate members and the Boulder business community to our inaugural Ambassador Program networking event held virtually. Before we begin, I'd like to say a hearty thank you to Bruce Borowski of Boulder Digital Arts. Bruce is a strategic and vital member of our NAACP Economic Opportunity Committee. We thank you for making this event, helping to make this event possible. I'd also like to thank John Taylor and the Boulder Chamber for co-sponsoring in part this event. To set the tone and introduce our Ambassador Program networking event, some of our young and talented NAACP members have put together a comical take on a few common workplace situations that can occur.
Boulder NAACP, I'm Jonathan Capelli.
And I'm Nyasha James Davis.
We're here to welcome you to Black Talk, Racism in the Workplace.
First, a big thank you to Jude for moderating this event. And thank you all for being here this evening.
Now, given the massive increase in remote working for many of us, there are far fewer opportunities for people to be racist in person.
That's right. I mean, today marks the 5,000th day in a row that, for example,
I haven't had someone go for a handshake, transform into a fist bump, and then miss.
And I haven't had anyone mispronounce my name.
I can listen to bluegrass, wear shorts in a blizzard, line dance, eat unseasoned mashed potatoes, don my Patagonia fleece to the yacht club regatta, and if I turn my camera off, no one can call me an Oreo. What?
But remember, COVID has hidden workplace racism, but that doesn't mean it's actually gone.
Racism in the workplace will be back if we survive this, and we need to know what to do when that moment comes.
So, Jonathan and I have assembled a few tips. Just kidding. NAACP, this is your job.
I don't know what I'm going to do next time someone asks me to rap.
And I literally have nothing to twerk.
So, NAACP, whether it's fixing any racism or outie racism,
we're counting on you.
Yeah, Chad, if I can get on in my inbox ASAP, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have that by the end of the day.
So guys, you know who our new manager is, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And you know why I got that position, right?
Yep.
Hey guys. Sorry, just got some coffee. New manager here.
Oh, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, brother? Damn, homeboy, I see you up in here. Getting your type on and shit. But for real, though. Hey, for real, dog. When are we gonna b-ball? King James, bitch. Am I right? Love Cleveland.
I don't know, man. Like, sometime after COVID is over, I assume?
Yeah, for shizzle my numps.
Everything is so white here. Hey, Bankiki.
It's Bonnie.
Oh, okay, whatever. So I just want to come out of this quarantine with some sweet moves. So I was wondering if you could teach me how to twerk.
Why would you assume I know how to twerk?
I don't know. You just kind of give me that vibe. I just feel like you'd be really good at it. You know, girlfriend? Like, did you just dab earlier?
I was sneezing.
Oh, well, okay, but I know you can do it. I mean, just look at you. I mean, you know what I mean. Don't make it weird.
It was so short last week. How did you get it to grow out like this?
It's extensions.
Oh, no way. What ethnicity are your extensions?
You know, you kind of look tense. Maybe we could play some music to relax you? Or I could sing a song like, Is it love? Is it love that I'm feeling?
I wanna love you and treat you right.
Thank you, Nyasha, Jonathan, and company for that wonderful introduction to our topic and our approach. Once again, I am Jude Landsman, Chair of NAACP Boulder County's Economic Opportunity Committee. A few facts about our organization. We are a local branch of the national NAACP, founded in 1909, 111 years ago, by a diverse group of Black leaders, elite whites, Jews, and determined women. NAACP Boulder County in 2020 is much the same. The mission of the NAACP is to eliminate race-based and anti-Black discrimination and to promote the equal rights of all persons. It is a simple but multifaceted vision. NAACP Economic Opportunity has designed and is implementing our ambassador program in our business community. The ambassador program is designed to take advantage of the unique abilities of the NAACP and its members to help businesses and organizations in recruiting, retention, and community support for Black and people of color hires. Our working title at one time for the ambassador program was Welcome, Please Stay. The introductory video revealed some of the commonplace misconceptions and cultural incompetency encountered in the workplace in an exaggerated way. The message for us today is set assumptions and preconceptions about race in the workplace aside. We aim to approach this topic candidly with humor and truth. To that end, I'd like to introduce our panelists, and hopefully they'll come on. Turn cameras on. Welcome, Fred Davis, Head of Talent and Acquisition at PNL Labs. Welcome, Rick Sterling, co-founder of the Sterling Rice Group, and Annette Davis, our president of NAACP Boulder County. Let's dive right in. I'll start with Annette. Why is it important to be able to talk candidly about race in the workplace?
Well, I think, thank you, Jude. We're excited about this opportunity to speak to our community. But I think that there are so many reasons to dialogue about race in the workplace. First being that race is in the room. The very structure of our society is built on race. And silence is not neutral, and neutral is not effective. So frequent and open conversations around race benefits the corporation, the whole environment within the business structure. And these conversations should be held regardless to the diversity of the employee force, right? If your organization has one person of color, or if your organization has none to 100, I think to have these conversations is equally important. So I think that the more you have these conversations, the more all employees get comfortable with examining and looking at, and the fear of mishaps starts to dissipate. It allows one to accept and understand that race is heavily weighted in both who gets hired and who get promoted. The more you expose that, the better we are at being able to mitigate biases that go into making those decisions. I think that, as you start to do this, I think that there'll be a natural progression for businesses to not just look at diversity as a profit motive, right, from a pure profit motive standpoint, but start to move into thinking about diversity in your workforce, racial diversity, as a moral choice. And I think that, all the research shows that a diverse workforce improves decision making. It is more innovative. It has more creativity. But just at a granular level, I think having these conversations kind of gives dignity and visibility to those employees of color, to Black employees, Indigenous and other peoples of color. It builds, I think, a feeling of inclusion, and it leads to differences not being less than, but an understanding where differences is valued as an asset. There are certainly many, many others, and we could go on. But
thank you. You've touched on a lot of points: invisibility and honesty, and a workplace environment that is accepting and dealing with what's real. So, Fred, would you like to address this issue of why it's important to speak about race candidly in the workplace?
Sure. Hopefully you can hear me okay. But I would say, just to, everything that Annette had said, but, from my perspective and my experience, there's the race and there's the racism, being able to talk about race, and then racism, which is attached to intolerance, right? And you don't want to be hindered by effectively talking about intolerance of any kind. You don't want to be hindered in who your market base might be, the exposure to your customer base. You don't want to be hindered by that, and you want to make sure your workforce is strong, because at the end of the day, you want to cast the wider net to get the best talent, right? We don't want to give jobs away. That's never been the issue over years. The goal is for any company is to get the best talent they absolutely can, and sometimes people are hindered in where they source talent and how they develop talent. So for those reasons, I think we need to make sure we talk about race, racism, and intolerance in the workforce.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Casting a wider net has also come up. Rick, do you have thoughts about why it's important to be able to talk about race in the workplace?
Well, I think that in our case, we are kind of decided that culture trumps strategy and what we were trying to create at the Sterling Rice Group, and so you very much want your employee base to be kind of agnostic on race, on religion, on any form of ethnicity, and so being able to interact and collaborate requires that you just have to be able to put everything on the table and have honest, direct conversations with people. So I have to admit, in our organization, I think while we had good intentions, we failed in many respects in sort of building the kind of the racial diversity that we wished we could have. Maybe that's a common problem in Boulder, but we in some ways, you know, I wish we had had the opportunity to have more racial discussions. You know, we just didn't have nearly the diversity that we needed to have, we should have, we wanted to have.
Thank you. I think that Fred brought up a good point about the difference between talking and acknowledging race in the workplace and racism that exists in the workplace and what to do about that. Which brings me to the next question I'd like to explore, which is discussing some of the obstacles and difficult experiences for Black people in the workplace. Some of the things that have come up are such things as invisibility, code switching, cultural incompetence or insensitivity, looking around the corner, and knowing and promoting Black workers. So, Fred, I'd like to begin with you because you used this term, looking around the corner. And I think that it's appropriate to maybe explain that term.
So I think in you know, if you give me credit for that, thank you for that. I think we've all had some illusion of that, but I think for the most part, you start looking around the corner when you see the job posted, right? I work in talent acquisition and recruiting, and sometimes you're looking for inclusive language just in the job posting. You're looking for, you know, I don't know how just about everybody else, but I know there's a lot of people within my network. When you see a job posted and you're gonna do some searching around the company, one thing you can look at, you're gonna look at diversity issues, right? Look for gender issues, LGBT issues. You're gonna see how inclusive they at least claim to be on the website, right? And then hopefully you're gonna start looking for more stuff when you start getting further down the interview process. So I think it starts from the minute you see the job posted, you start doing some research about the organization, and then hopefully you have the opportunity to ask some questions in a tactful way when you start moving through the interview process. And then once you're on, you know, as you and I talked about, you know, the other day, you know, studies show those first 90 days, you know, if you're going to stay with the company or not, right? You're looking around, you're seeing that you have an opportunity to grow, you're looking for mentors and people to connect with and build community with in your organization. And then the next step after those 90 days is, what is your opportunity to grow after a year? After you've proven yourself in that job or position, how are you going to be able to grow? And sometimes not just in compensation or title, just sometimes in your evaluation. I hear that a lot with people. I didn't get a fair evaluation. My boss doesn't know me, right? These kind of things. So I would say those three areas. So as you're coming on board, as you're onboarded, and then as you're developed as an employee, you're always you have that anxiety, I think, on a regular basis, like a lot of employees, but maybe a little bit more for people of color, because you want to be able to grow, because at the end of the day, you want to provide for your family. So to me, an organization who is committed to enhance diversity, they really need to understand what that means. Just recruiting, let's go recruit some people of color and women. That's maybe 10% of the battle. The rest is keeping those folks and developing.
Thank you. Yes, recruitment is just sort of the tip of the iceberg. Annette, would you like to share thoughts on this? Obstacles?
Yeah, I think, you know, studies show that Black people in particular, you know, and Asians, I guess, as part of the study I read recently, whitewash their resumes, right? And so the study showed that when the resume is whitewashed, which means, you know, leaving out any indication to that would reveal race or ethnicity, that they got more interviews. And they got more interviews irregardless of whether or not the hiring organization specifically said that they were in search of employees of color, or that they were open to that. So I think that there's some things that have to start happening in-house, right? If people of color feel that they have to whitewash their interview, their resume, so they get hired, they come in, and they already have set up this phase from starting out that is kind of removes them from their authenticity. And then once the authenticity to be yourself, right, is revealed, it's going to lead to satisfaction, less fulfillment, I would think. And I think that would take you back to what Fred said, you know, within the first 90 days, if this is going to be a good fit for you. So I think there's so much groundwork that has to be done as we start to think about how corporations take on a role, a serious role towards economic and social justice. And it just starts at the very base level of employers addressing, you know, and having these conversations before you actually start to look for the right applicant.
Thank you. Rick, do you have anything to add about this scenario? Do you think that in your experience in searching for trying to get a diversity in that to reach that goal, do you think that there was awareness of the particular difficulties that Black people might have in the workplace?
I guess because I feel like we failed significantly, we must have had some lack of awareness in some of the issues involved, because we, in our strategic plans, almost every year, we would have some form of how do we sort of grow the diversity of the company racially, and we actually would put a number of things in place, and I think our intentions were good, but they just were not effective, and so there's a missing link, you know. So I guess I don't know what it is we didn't do. That's one of the reasons why I'm kind of excited to get you know, that the company could get involved with the NAACP, you know, to potentially help, you know, companies like ours that have that want to do the right thing but are not as effective as they should be.
Fred, do you have any answers to that? Or thoughts? Let's say maybe there's not answers, but we are interested in providing tangible tools, and that it is an issue for Boulder County, verifiable issue in attracting and retaining Black hires.
Right. No, I think one of the things is that I've learned over the years from many people in situations I've been in is some people consider this diversity thing, right, a plus minus kind of problem, right, to solve, but it's trigonometry, right, at its highest level. And so as a company puts together a diversity plan that I've seen multiple ones, you know, the ones that are really comprehensive, really strategic, multi-tiered are the ones that are approached. There are some that just simply say, let's do training, let's do bias training, let's just do recruiting. Individual single person, a single tier type strategies are not effective. And I've always said, as once again, as you and I talked about the other day, if there's not effective inclusive efforts within the organization first, it doesn't matter how much you recruit, right? Because once again, you're going to get that, people are going to come and they're going to turn around and get the heck out of there, right? And we know from an ROI perspective that turnover is going to cost the company, and it costs energy and time that they put into it, as Rick can probably allude to from what things he shared before. So once again, I think a comprehensive multi-tiered approach that doesn't just look at the talent management side of things, but also looks at environment, community engagement, all these things, has got to be key. And then you can start looking at recruiting. And I'm big on setting just hardcore. I'm a numbers guy. You know, the bottom line is results, right? If you can't meet those results, so be it. I think if you just say we're going to develop this many people, we're going to bring in this much diverse talent, and not just for EEO's sake, that's how you can get really smart people who care to come up with solutions to a really complex problem.
Well, this is something that the ambassador program, and looking at it, and us looking at what is the issue, what needs to be done. It's also a multi-pronged approach. You can't just recruit without. This also came up in conversations, and Rick, I'd like you to speak to this, but this has come up from everyone, that it's not enough that you just decide we want diversity because it's a good thing, or because we need DEI goals, but that the values of the company, that the policies, the underlying values of the entire company reflect that. And I know you spoke about the values, how important it was to be a value-driven company, Rick, and I think that that's a very important. That's important for all our business community to hear, as we need businesses to change the culture of our community and make us a welcoming, more livable and equitable community.
You want me to comment on that?
Yes, I do. I want you to talk about how you developed the values of your company.
Yeah, when I started the company, since we were starting it from scratch, and my partner and I, we said, look, we kind of have an opportunity to create somewhat of a social experiment and practice our profession at the highest level, but do it with a level of sensitivity to the community and to a set of values that were important to us. So the first thing we did is we literally, over beers, we wrote out the things that we believed in. It was almost like our Constitution, and they included, things like integrity and respect and social impact and some others, and we found those to be really critical to the success that we've had with the company. And we would set strategy off these. We would quantify them every year, getting ratings from our employees and so on and so forth. And consequently, in terms of social impact, we decided that, what was it that mattered most to us? And it was around the areas of social justice, and it, kind of helped guide us to some of the things that as an organization we wanted to get involved with. And that was all on MetaNet. It was our involvement both through board involvement and financial help with the Family Learning Center, which was kind of an area of, helping underprivileged, mostly minority children with educational preparedness. And so, for 30 years, we've been deeply involved with that, and the whole company has gotten involved with that. And so that was one of the layers using Fred's, kind of multi-tiered diversity strategy. It was kind of one of the layers to our strategy, although I guess we weren't really doing it for recruitment purposes. We were just doing it because we thought it was important to do. Maybe there was something that we could or should have done to help us with our own diversity issue.
Well, thank you. It is necessary in these times more than ever for the business community to realize the necessity of responsibility for social justice in our community. So, and clearly that value is still not enough to recruit and retain Black workers to Boulder County. So what do we do about that? And I wanted to circle back because I think this is an important sensitivity to realize, cultural sensitivity, that as we discussed with looking around corners, that there's also this aspect of code switching that has to do with possibly the greater level of tension that is unrecognized, that may be experienced by Black people in the workplace. So, Annette, could you sort of enlighten us about what is meant by code switching in the workplace, and how it has to do with perceptions about socializing?
Yes, thanks, Jude. I appreciate what you said about corporations starting to own their place in a community. I think that, businesses do anchor a community. They truly can, I think, move racial justice farther ahead than, say, what we think of in terms of the public sector doing it. So I just wanted to add that. And I'm hoping, and that's what we're hoping within NAACP corporate membership, is that to be a support in getting businesses to see how they move and support these missions that builds on a more equitable community. But so going to code switching inside of a business, it really comes down to people not being able to feel like they can be authentic, right? So it's about racial awareness, in understanding and valuing the diversity that's in the workplace. So oftentimes Black people are pretty inauthentic, right? So they don't want to spend time after work with their coworkers. They feel like they're playing a game all alone. It's like you should have a team, but you're the only player. So it's isolating. And so when that happens, I think it's a negative to the organization because they're not, the Black people or people of color employees are not feeling welcome. They're not feeling like they can fully share. And when that happens, you lose because there's talent that's not being tapped. There's ideas and solutions. So I think one of the things that businesses have to start thinking about is how do we receive information? How do we hear it? Can we hear it from someone who looks different than, say, the majority? And so the more these conversations about race take place and people become comfortable with them, you start to see, okay, so this is how this particular person expresses in an idea. So now you become clearer and you can hear it in a way that it can be implemented. And so then the person of color, the employee of color, has no need to switch back and forth, right? They can be their true, authentic self. And that should be the goal, I think, of every good business, is to have every employee bring their true self to the table. And that should be respected and valued. And then you can get to, their abilities, right? I think it would ultimately lead to who gets promoted and who gets which job assignments. If you know that employee authentically, and they're not switching, being this way inside the space or with this coworker and different with another coworker, then you can decide, okay, this person really has the ability to get this assignment. What I've seen, in some of the situations that I've been in, is that people that people of color, Black people, have a tendency to be more reserved, feeling that what they bring to the table might not be properly received, and then it can't be properly vetted for its merits.
Right. Any thoughts on this topic, Fred?
Oh, yeah, it's just the question itself made me think of one of my favorite professors. I went to grad school at San Francisco State and studied ethnic studies and also psychology. And, the extreme example of living in the Bay Area, right, of code switching is speaking a completely another language in the workplace versus speaking a Midwestern accent, American way. And so one of the things that this favorite professor of mine told the class was, in an attempt to be humorous, was for African Americans, it's TH, ER, and ING, right? So you want to make sure that you're using your thes appropriately. You're saying ER at the end of the appropriate words and ING, right? And so when you code switch at work, right, like as I'm speaking out my Midwestern kind of dialect, that's kind of what you're hearing from me. But when I'm with close friends, former teammates, whatever, I'm going to switch it up, right? And so I like what Annette said, because it's not just the words and the dialect, it's also the behavior. You're doing stuff that you necessarily want to do. You're going to events and activities after work, laughing at jokes that you don't get or apply to you. That's all that kind of stuff, which is stressful. And when you have to do that a lot, it causes that tension, right? That knot in your stomach, because at the end of the day, you're fully aware, if you've grown up in a predominantly white society or school or set of schools, people are going to question your commitment and your intelligence. And that is not fair. I like what Annette said. You want to be your authentic self. And more times than not, if you're given an assignment that you usually wouldn't get, you're going to knock it out of the park. Just because you can't speak or behave in a certain way doesn't mean you're not committed, and it definitely doesn't mean you're not intelligent.
Right, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're uneducated either, right? Great, I appreciate that. Something that also came up in regards to more on the solution end is this came up in an interview that Annette was on, but in hiring, why just hire one person of color? So there's only one person there. So the possibility of creating a support system, which the ambassador program is also addressing, but what this idea that to bring diversity means to bring one person of color on board, and then that person doesn't have anyone who has to relate in perhaps a code switching way all day at work and to socialize afterwards. We've touched upon a few things. One is a need for community, but the other and the need for more diversity in the workplace. One way to deal with that seems to be forming affinity groups and somehow creating ways where there are more than one, or where someone is not so singled out. So, Rick, in your strategies and your recruitment strategies, however many years ago that when you were setting that out as a goal, did that come up, the idea of maybe like how many we recruit, or were you satisfied with one, or?
No, we were not satisfied with one. We never talked about how many or percentages. We just knew we weren't as diverse as we wanted to be. We didn't reflect, the market that we were serving, but we tried to get involved with because we're kind of a marketing oriented consulting firm. There's a multicultural marketing group at Leeds that we engaged, and we'd go talk with them, invite them in, and try to build relationships through them. We, Leeds at CU had their own recruitment problems, frankly, and so we would help them. They would bring in large classes of high school minority students that were considering Leeds, and every year, for a full day, 30 to 40 prospective students would come to our place, and we would talk to them, and so that was not directly answering your question, but it was a way where we were just trying to get in the game to a greater degree than what we were doing. And I think those were appropriate things to do. I think they apparently weren't enough either.
Well, you've stated that a number of times, and I would like to say that some things are bigger than even what a company's most highest goals, and the issues in Boulder County have a lot to do. The retention and the community support is a big part of what was quite possibly hindering your goals. And that's why we talk about building a community with diversity. We are actually in the position in Boulder County of building that community, of making it vibrant, and it takes intentionality. Annette has said that race neutral doesn't get it done. And Fred also sort of alluded to that also. And I wonder if you could expound on that a little, Annette, why race neutral is not enough.
Race neutral basically says that we're not going to change. It just maintains the status quo, right? It doesn't take you ahead because you're not delving into the real issue, right? It might make you feel okay, and it gives us plausible deniability that race is not the issue. So because we are all kind of just, kind of liberal, kind of just keeping it, where it is. So in order to make those leaps, it has to be intentional. It has to be frequent. It can't be the once a year, let's talk about diversity. And it can't be, if you have people of color, just cramming all of them into your decision-making around diversity. Should they have an integral role? Absolutely. But I think that when you segregate that discussion to people of color, it automatically gets devalued just based on the structure of the society. So we have to start moving away from neutral and moving into action, right? Neutral just allows you to coast, right? And it only takes you downhill. So we have to get to putting in place like concrete plans. And I think numbers matter. And I think that if you set a goal saying that we're going to hire 4 Black people this year, then you have a measurable, a tangible measurable. Not that there aren't other things that are intangible that also should be taking place, but hard numbers, quotas are effective, right? Maybe illegal, but they certainly are effective. So I would encourage, businesses who really want to start changing the paradigm and owning their power to do community good is to start really doing some hard numbers. That will take you out of neutral. It also gives you an opportunity to have the dialogues that we're talking about, talking about race in the workplace. It's easy to stay in neutral if you're never forced to have to change gears, right? You don't have the diversity, racial diversity makeup on your team, so it might be easier not to talk about that. Not that you shouldn't, you should actually, but it makes it more comfortable not to have that conversation. If you increase by numbers, then conflict will arise, so that you will have to have those types of discussions. And then that will take you out of the neutral gear.
Out of the neutral zone. Well, Fred, I know you talked about metrics and you talked about providing a welcoming meal at the table, which was an image I really liked in terms of recruitment. And I'd like you to talk about those two things, maybe.
Yeah, once again, I think it goes back. Yeah, I think it goes back to what was I think we all alluded to before, and once again to echo something Annette just said. You can set, if the quota is the word you don't want to use, you can still set goals around diversity. And as I said before, the bottom line is results. Otherwise it's just talk. If you're just sitting here talking and you don't want to put some programs in place in an organization, you don't want to invest in that, so be it. And if you really want to measure some of the most prominent metrics that are out there for any organization is at least from a talent management perspective, once again, there's community engagement, talent management, and then there's also work environment and productivity, which is a whole other issue. But in the talent management area, you're looking at applicant pool, hires, retention, and then even exit interview, right? As you want to do these things. So, and when I talk about retention, you're looking at who's here 1 year from now, 2 years from now, and as I alluded to before, how they're developing. So I think an organization doesn't need to make it harder than it really is. You just have to commit to do the work, and not just for a year and not just for the last 7 months, right? Because of what's happened, globally. And I think that's a concern that a lot of people are, at least that do the diversity work in organizations. They'll see all these jobs posted all of a sudden for diversity managers and directors. But it's going to be funded next year. That's what I want to know, right? For an organization. And then the second part was the second part of the question. So metrics.
We're talking about preparing a welcoming meal at the table, offering a welcoming meal, and about the intentionality that's necessary for changing this. As Annette says, race neutral, staying in neutral, we need to up the gears. So to do that, there's some
from the top down, sometimes, and there's been stories, what you and I talked about the other day in preparation for today. There's sometimes the effort is just within the HR department, right? But it's got to start from the top down, a commitment from senior leadership, the CEO. I don't care if you're a 20-person startup, a mid-sized company, or a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000. If the commitment isn't there from the top down to hold people accountable to get results, that's key. And one way to get results is you can ask for a dashboard from your hiring managers, right, or from your division directors or department directors. You can require them to sponsor an ERG or employee resource group or affinity group, right? It's got to be a mandate from the very top down, and you'll feel that as an employee. I mean, I'm sure we can all attest to it. If someone, as we jokingly say, is faking the funk, or better yet, the illusion of inclusion, versus if they're really bought into it and really want to make this part of their business strategy to grow and be effective.
Right, thank you. And I guess we have this example of coming from the top and still not being able to achieve diversity. And what I'm hearing is that also that the relationships, there needs to be an authenticity there in relationships, in the building of relationships, of knowing your employees, having an opportunity for them to believe that they're not just there for, that it's a sincere effort. So just to conclude this portion, let's discuss tools. What can we say besides the ambassador program that is dealing with these issues? Can we hear ideas for how to get out of neutral?
Are we jumping in?
Whomever, yes, jump in.
Yeah, this has been really great. So I think, one is to commit to have these discussions, right, in your place. It is to, I think, create personal learning lists. Like, how do we personally, inside the corporation, from the top down, as Fred was talking about. And so how do we start to close the gap of what Rick was describing as, having a good intention, but not being able to actualize it. So one is, I think you start having those conversations just candidly in your with your employees, with the upper management, the procedures, build a supportive infrastructure where these things are, racial diversity is incentivized. And then once you're having the conversations, I think it's so important to be completely and fully open, right? I think you have to operate those conversations from a yes and, right? Everything is yes, and then let's build more onto it. So those would be my immediate suggestions for how we get out of neutral and into action and into changing the values of the corporate environment.
Fred, any?
Yeah, I would add, once again, a lot of the good stuff Rick and Ed are already alluding to, but to me, as an organization that is seeking to do diversity work or even reboot their diversity work, right? There's a lot of companies that are rebooting their efforts, once again, especially over the last 7 to 8 months, is ask why. What is it you're hoping for as a result? And I would even say, to be blunt, it's okay to make it a business case. It's the right thing to do in social justice. We know if it's two circles kind of intertwined, you could make sure it's there. But it's okay to say that because we want to enhance who uses our services or our product. That's part of it. But also we want to bring on and retain the best talent. So I think that's something to do. And to really ask yourself what you're doing for. Because if you're not clear on what it is you're doing, you won't know who you're looking for and why. There's a multitude of really talented diversity practitioners out there. And if you want someone who's there and seasoned, they're going to come with some strategies that are probably going to knock you off kilter a little bit. And you're going to be like, that it's going to cost that much. It's going to cost what? And they're going to come with a plan. And so just, if you're going to do this thing, do it right and do it great and help drive your business in the way that you see forth, not just for the dollars, but for the commitment to success in the community. And then that way you brainstorm with that diversity practitioner that you bring on as an individual, as a team, and you set some realistic goals. Because the worst thing that happens, and once again, Judy and you and I talked about this with different companies, municipalities in Boulder, Denver, whatever, they're not clear on what they want. And so therefore there's frustration, all the way around. And at the end of the day, you have someone sitting in an office just taking diversity complaints. And nobody wants that. That's not productive. We want to move the needle. We want to impact the next generation workforce, the next generation behind us. We owe it to them to do great work in this field, not just go in there half-heartedly.
Thank you. Rick, anything to add from your experience?
Well, I guess based on, Annette mentioned quotas and Fred mentioned goals and the experience that we often had, Sterling Ice Group was an attractive place to work at. And whenever there was an opening, there would be dozens or hundreds of applicants. And often there would not be a single Black American, that applied. And, and even over multiple years, we would kind of go, well, we wished, and, but you could just kind of throw up your hands and just, hire the best person that applied. And I wonder if in retrospect, if there shouldn't have been, there's got to be a certain minimum number of applicants. And if they don't come to you, you got to go find them somehow and push ourselves beyond where we did. And, it takes extra effort and work and time probably to do that. But, that might have been a helpful solution for our company.
For casting a wider net, it's pretty hard to find diversity if you're just staying within Colorado or CU. It's important to widen the net. I think you're right. Well, I would like to prepare to bring on some of our representatives from our corporate members, corporations or organizations that have joined us and have joined us and are and starting the ambassador program with us. We are so happy to begin that work. So I would like to bring on our panelists from Hutchinson Black and Cook, and from Mental Health Partners, and from Fresca Foods. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'll start with Megan and Daniel from Hutchinson Black and Cook, and I'd like you to just share with us what brought you to the NAACP, what motivated you to join us and the ambassador program, and we'll go through. We'll introduce everyone, and then we'll open it up for questions to our panelists.
Dan, I can
go ahead.
Yeah, why don't you kick it off, and then Okay. Well, thanks, Jude, for the introduction. My name is Megan Hungate, and I am an attorney at Hutchinson Black and Cook, as is Dan Williams, who's also with us. We are a law firm in downtown Boulder that the law firm has been around for 125 years or so. It's been around for a long time. Dan and I both joined in the last 3 or 4 years. So we are newer to the firm, but the firm itself has kind of a long history in Boulder, and really sort of prides itself as being a really an important member of the Boulder community. And so I think, like a lot of companies this year, in the wake of the death of George Floyd and all of the protests that have happened for months at this point this year, we really started talking internally about our own practices and culture of our firm, and sort of the diversity and inclusion within our firm. And I think we made a very conscious decision that we wanted to be part of the effort to really heal our society and make Boulder a more equitable and inclusive place to work and to live. And so that really motivated our decision to join the NAACP as a corporate member, and we're very excited to have these discussions and to learn from them going forward.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, and Megan, I think that's well said in terms of what we're up to. Our firm has tried to be a leader in the community for years, and I think over the last few decades, and certainly before Megan and I joined the firm,
there was a real culture in the firm of each lawyer doing their own thing and making the impact they wanted to make in the way they would make it. And, Ned, I appreciate what you said in the last segment about being neutral isn't being neutral. And I think with the Black Lives Matter movement and with us reflecting, we said, okay, there are reasons we had our culture as it was, but this is now a moment in our history when we're not going to sit on the sidelines. We all care about something and we need to go after it together, which is to make it a more inclusive society. So we, set about looking internally what we could do, externally facing what we could do, and partnering with the NAACP was just a very easy and natural part of that process and strategy.
Welcome. We're so happy to have you. Emily, would you like to, Emily is VP of Human Resources of Mental Health Partners, and they joined us, are interested in working the ambassador program. So Emily, would you like to share with us what brought you to us?
Yes, well, thanks for having me. So we are the Community Mental Health Center in the Boulder and Broomfield counties. And so we have served our communities, the marginalized populations of our communities with mental health or substance use needs for many, many years. And we do lack enough racial and ethnic diversity within our staff. And we've heard feedback. There are certain clients that we're not able to reach because they don't feel comfortable coming to MHP and being served by, someone who doesn't look like them or understand different cultural pieces. And there's, mental health is there's a huge cultural piece to how folks approach that. So have been, on a journey these past couple of years to increase diversity and have had fits and starts. It's hard. We've made the commitment to keep positions open until there are diverse candidates. And sometimes that can be a very long time. And it's a balance and, meeting the need because there are clients that need to be seen. So when there's a therapist role that's open for a year, that's, a year's worth of clients that aren't being seen. And so it's trying to find that balance, but have been doing a lot of work earlier this year and unfortunately hit a little bit of a delay with the COVID pandemic, and then a lot has happened since then. And we were connected with the NAACP this summer and really wanted to join to get some of that support and expertise and guidance on looking at our internal policies and procedures and how we can change and update those to be more inclusive to help, attract, I guess, but retaining is most important because like all of the panelists have said, it's, we can get folks to come here, but if they're not going to stay, then it's, everyone's frustrated. So just looking for that expertise and guidance to kind of help make MHP a better place for our staff and for our clients and our community, because a lot of people count on us.
Thank you. You perform an important service to our community. So Brandon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Brandon Vire, along with Mark, who's on the call here as well. Privileged to be the co-CEOs of Fresca Foods. We are a contract manufacturer based in Louisville. Make a ton of great food and snack products, mainly for larger food companies, but also a lot of entrepreneurs and mid-sized companies as well. Do a lot of innovation work. We have about 400 and it goes up and down, but about 450 people that work for Fresca Foods, and it's obviously a lot of hourly work and manufacturing work where that that workforce is a very diverse workforce. But I think Mark and I'll let Mark speak as well here, what brought us to the NAACP, I think a lot like some of the other folks on the call, is just really an increased desire to be more intentional with not only making sure that, there is diversity within our manufacturing workforce, but with our office team, with our leadership team, that there's diversity there, but also making sure or improving how we connect with our community, with not only the Boulder community, but with the community within our four walls. And, how do we connect more with the diversity that exists? How do we make sure we have programs in place that and we feel we do a pretty good job. But no, there's a level of intentionality that we seek to partner with the NAACP to make sure that we're doing everything we can to truly be a leader in the community and a leader in our own four walls with our diverse work group. Mark, anything you want to add or introduce yourself?
Yeah, Mark Bible, co-CEO. Brandon and I have been co-CEOs. We took over just before the pandemic, so it's been quite an adventure. Starting with, and we got in front of the company at our first company-wide meeting and said we're going to be stronger as a result of this pandemic, and we didn't know what that meant at the time. We probably could have listed some things, but we said we're going to be stronger. And I think at the time we thought culturally in terms of our safety, culturally in terms of our communication cadence. I don't think we would have thought about it from a diversity standpoint. I know I wouldn't have. And we have done that from a safety standpoint and from a communication standpoint. But really, the George Floyd murder changed everything for us. And Brand and I will talk about that crisis either destroys you or recreates you. And we decided that this crisis is going to recreate us. And as we reflect on the George Floyd murder, we're like, that wasn't I look at it like it's a crisis, but it's not, because that's been going on. And that was kind of a realization for us that we need to be more intentional about our leadership in the community. We have a very diverse population in our manufacturing team, but quite honestly, that's diverse basis where we pull from. We can be more intentional about that internally, and we certainly want to be more intentional about that externally. And as Brandon and I look around and look at each other, we recognize that we don't walk in the shoes. And so we reached out to the NAACP to help us with that. We know that progress requires the truth, and the truth is we need help in figuring out what that progress can look like, what concrete actions we as a company can take. And though while we're learning, we still want to be leaders, because I think you can do those two together. So lead in the community while we're learning and making a difference. And so that's what brings us here today. And I think we're both overjoyed at being part of this and excited. And listening to all the panelists and the comments. I've got 2 pages of notes here already on thoughts and things that we can and must do moving forward, not should do, must do moving forward. But no, thank you for this opportunity to join you today.
Thank you. Very heartening to hear. So we will do this informally. Are there any questions any of our corporate members would like to pose?
Yeah, I actually, if I could go ahead. So I'd like to talk about the community, the affinity groups, and thoughts in our area given the diversity in our area. In my background, I knew for those kinds of connections, I went to Pastor Robinson at the Baptist Church. I had a very strong Black Champions Network. I had a diversity mentoring program. We don't know where to go in this area or how we could start that. As we do recruit Black employees, as we expand upon that, is there opportunities to have affinity groups across companies? I would appreciate your thoughts on that, because I know how vitally important that spirit and feeling of community is for retention purposes.
Do you want to toss it to anybody, or?
Well, Fred, if you go, please.
Oh, yeah. So I would, 10, 15 years ago, the theory with affinity groups or ERGs, employee resource groups, was to let it be organic, let that group do it. But one of the things about businesses in Boulder, right, they're very small, right? If you're a Fortune 500, that's easy to do. But if you're looking at a regular FTE employee base of 500 or less, right, it's just tougher to get them to galvanize. Plus, you have hourly employees. Does that mean you're going to let them meet during company time? Mm-hmm. Right? All these things you need to think through. But if there's any kind of, once again, from leadership top down, if you've thought all those things through. And another thing that's important to do, is leadership within an affinity group or ERG is ideally identified as a development opportunity. Mm-hmm. There's dozens of people passionate about diversity work. I get it, but sometimes you want to make sure someone is performing well. Otherwise, it reflects back on the work that you've committed to do. And as I said before, you can't go out there half-heartedly and do great work. It's got to be sustainable, and then maybe turn over every 2 years with that opportunity. So, you know, one of the things that people have done, and once again, anybody is like a needs assessment or survey amongst your workforce. Do you see a need for that? What type of groups do you want? It could range from African American, it could be general people of color, it could be parents with special needs, LGBT. It's just to start something. And as I've often said, to wait for the perfect moment, it's never going to happen. But if I think there's a way to galvanize and call a first meeting, and then set a senior leader as a sponsor, and go. But I think, yeah, make sure it's a development opportunity. Whoever heads that up for the first couple of years for you as you're launching it.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
my 2 cents.
No, thank you, sir.
I have a question for Fred. You know, I found your remarks very helpful. Our size is not, we're certainly not a Fortune 500, and we're not really in the 500 or less bucket. I mean, we're 45 people roughly, or 40 people, of whom 30 are lawyers. And how does that translate, you know, in terms of setting goals? Obviously, I think the goals are obviously different when that's your size. But do you have tips or thoughts for smaller firms or smaller companies in Boulder, in our community, and how to recruit effectively to build a community when there just aren't that many of us?
And once again, I'm just pulling because I learned from wiser people than me. But I think as I pull things off my mental bookshelf here, it's that there are opportunities to do diversity and inclusion leadership groups, right? Or some people call them DILTs, or there are all kinds of acronyms you could do. So it doesn't have to be a specific, you know, community. Didn't, you know, to make someone feel welcome doesn't necessarily require you have to be the same race, right? Same racial categories. But if you want to have a group of people, well-meaning, smart, who want to see us move the needle in this work, you can just pull folks together with you know, one of those diversity councils or whatever term you want to use, and just, you know, what's the famous line? You know, it just takes a small group of people to change the course of history, right? Even if you just get 6 to 8 people to get the ball rolling, put some initiatives, once again, multi-tiered, nothing real simple. It's too easy to say, just recruit. Let's say it's recruit people of color, recruit some women. That's a one leg on a 3-legged stool, right? So, but I would say get a multi-tiered thing, and then a plan, but just bring some people together that you know can execute on it, and doesn't take too much. I have to say, as an HR person, it doesn't take too much time for their primary job, right? They still have their main job, and some people are going to get really into it. It's going to take up, you know, 5 to 6 hours a week in their work, and hopefully it shouldn't do that, unless you appoint somebody to that role and compensate them appropriately for it.
And we've talked about affinity groups. Do you have any thoughts to share about that?
Yeah, I think Fred explained it exceptionally well. And I like the idea of looking at that as a growth opportunity, you know, for the person heading that up. But I do think that they're important. You know, it gives camaraderie, right? A shared language. And I think that certainly once you have that, it's going to add positively back to the business. So I recommend them. And I think if you're in a business environment where you have 1 or 2 persons of color, then you have to maybe look at other ways that where affinity can be found. You know, it just enhances everything. I highly recommend them.
Well, I understand there is an affinity group formed in Boulder for county workers. Is that right?
Boulder Valley School District just recently formed an affinity group for Black employees, which covers the entire gamut, right? So every Black employee, and I think they have a total of around 60 is the information that was shared. They're really looking forward to it. So It's brand new. And I think affinity groups in this area seem to be fairly new.
Fairly new.
In terms of businesses really owning that they have value and that they're willing to support them.
That might be an interesting role or opportunity that the NAACP can could play, because I think for smaller organizations, like Hutchinson and like Sterling Rice Group, it may be an affinity group needs to sort of transcend their own organization. It's got to be some broader set of partnerships to build it. And so, there's almost a convening role that could take place.
That's a very innovative thought, Rick. We'll add that to our.
Yes, we'll take that under consideration. But that is something that has come up. Fred had mentioned that about affinity groups across corporations or across groups. So a Black lawyer affinity group that would transcend just one firm, because uniting is also one of the words. It's creating community we have to do intentionally here. I think we have time for maybe one more question.
I have a question. I'm just curious, like when we've tried to do this work, I think like there has been a tendency in our leadership group to want to get it perfect and then not roll out anything until everything's perfect. But right, like this is life, nothing is perfect. And then we tend to kind of, back in January, we kind of landed on trying to, with our DEI initiatives, focusing on racial equality within MHP. And then, we took, like I said, a small break due to COVID and kind of transitioning to remote services. And then when we came back, it seems like folks had shifted, and then they kind of hang on. They think, oh, maybe the LGBTQ is a better focus, or gender. And so I don't know if any of the panelists have recommendations on kind of how, I don't want to I can't wait to move these initiatives forward, because it's really important. We need to start doing things. And I worry that I don't want to alienate people, but how do you kind of, I don't want to say sell them on it, but it is kind of right, how do we kind of still move forward even if we have to leave some people behind? I don't know if you've had to deal with that or have suggestions.
Well, I think that's, you have to start thinking about, if it's intentional, then you have to put together a strategic plan, and then you work your plan to get you to your goal. And all of those things matter, right? If it's racial diversity or gender diversity. But you said earlier that you have clients that basically are saying they don't feel welcome to your services because you lack diversity. So it seems like there's a critical business need there. And so one would think that now would be the time to become intentional about filling that need. So you do that by, having this conversation and having that conversation with your staff and the people within your business right now. That's the whole idea. The more you talk about it and you can plan for it, and then it doesn't seem like an oddity or that you're leaving people behind, and the fear starts to dissipate because you become comfortable with that lingo.
Yeah, I would even add that the reality is, as you stand up this effort, you're not going to make 100% of people 100% happy, right? But and if you just keep reacting to people's angry calls or emails that you will get as you stand this up, you'll never get it going. So it's kind of, and I agree 100% with Annette, that if you have a strategy and you let people know that this pillar stood up, in 6 months we'll have the next aspect of it next month, you're good to go. But it takes that's where it takes, one of my favorite terms is velvet hammer. That's where you have to have someone who's who's able to kind of tactfully let them know we'll get to you. We'll get to you. It's part of a bigger plan. And you got to socialize the plan. Make sure everyone is aware of where you're at every stage of your implementation. So.
Yeah, and we have tried to do that too, when just making sure that everyone feels welcome, right? And that doesn't mean that someone won't feel welcome. It's just making sure everyone has equal access. And I think folks do get scared in it. I always feel like I'm telling people, oh yeah, we'll get to that. Or just mention that. We do have focus groups that we're conducting with staff to kind of get their feedback to help develop that plan. And that should be ready in the next, that feedback should be ready in the next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to that. I think it is including everyone, right? What I think needs to change might not be what our staff think is important to focus on.
Thank you. Our time is just about up, but I want to say that talking about race is not easy. It takes courage and it takes determination and it takes perseverance. So I encourage you all to persevere in these goals. And the NAACP is a great resource. We've taken great care in the ambassador program to try and meet the intersectionality of the needs to create a vibrant, enriched community with diversity, to build it, to sustain it, to encourage it and nourish it. The NAACP doesn't have chapters, it has branches. And our branch in Boulder is budding and beginning to bloom. So I thank you for all your participation. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to our esteemed president and Rick and Fred and our corporate members who are so essential to making this work happen and to making this vision happen, so that maybe it won't be so difficult to recruit. If you are having recruiting, if you want tips on recruiting, please don't hesitate to come to the NAACP Boulder County as a thought resource and a very practical resource. So let's see if I have all my closing remarks. Information is in the chat on our corporate membership, on the ambassador program, and on contacting me and the NAACP Economic Opportunity Committee. Thank you so much for participating. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jude.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.